Hello and welcome everybody to the Truth Lab. This is episode number 10. I'm your host, Alex Landry, and today's special guest is Kevin Bahula. Kevin and I have been friends for over a decade. We met in 2010, and Kevin's been very instrumental in my truth-seeking journey. So I'm really excited today for our discussion and to be able to highlight Kevin's truth-seeking journey. So how you doing today, Kevin?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. So how would you say your truth seeking journey began? And feel free to share a little bit about your background.
Probably like most people, I actually ran into my truth seeking, if you want to call it that, by hardship, and not necessarily actual hardship, but more of a personal stress hardship. Like got myself kind of cornered in a pretty dark, lonely place, and was working for a company that was kind of shutting down. And uh, at the same time, I had gone through a divorce. Part of my viewpoints on marriage and divorce were it was forever and it should never be broken. And so I was like really, really broken by it. And I started doing yoga classes after my marriage ended. And shortly after I started doing yoga, I started having these weird body sensations after classes. It felt like stirring energy or movement.
Hmm.
And later I got to a place where I understood that to be some sort of Kundalini awakening, which is in yogic philosophy, the Kundalini is the seat of your sort of God consciousness and your awareness. And um, over a period of time, I became aware that I had a hand in my life and my creation of my life, and started actually intending for things to go my way, so to speak, instead of being kind of a victim of life. And within 4 months of having all this happen, I said, well, if I can do anything, I want to move to Australia. And I'm in 4 months after I stated that, I was on a plane to Australia, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
And studied energy healing, and I think my first one was Reiki. There was a temple in St. Petersburg, Florida, called uh, the what is it, Center of Christ Consciousness or something like that. It was Mayan Reiki. I believe the founder has passed, but it's gone on to his protege. But I learned Reiki, and then I learned quantum touch. And then when I got down to Australia, I was just, I had my weekends free. So I went and took courses, and one of the courses I took was theta healing. And the, excuse me, the Reiki courses were indirect. So somebody comes to you for a headache, and, it was kind of hit or miss whether the headache would be resolved. And I was like, I want something more direct. And what I learned in the theta class is that our body and our mind and our emotions, they're all sort of entangled. And you can actually access physical healing by altering your thoughts or altering your emotions. And you can also improve your emotional and mental state by physical activity. Like all three of them sort of linked together. Probably there's four. Um, and so started playing with that, became a teacher at Theta Healing. And when I moved back to the US, went deeper in that. And a few years later, I think I met Alex. I got back to 2008, and I met Alex in 2010. And he was hardcore into yoga. And it was really thrilling to run into young people, and he was in his early 20s, who were so gung-ho about consciousness and learning about awakening and awareness. And it was really great to run into him. We're like, brothers from different mothers.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And now, I guess you don't mind sharing, Kevin, how look at where you're at. You're in this unique dome in Colorado, so you're not in Florida.
Well, what was really interesting was 2007 or 8 or 9 or probably 9. I taught a class in St. Pete, and one of the guys who came to the class, he said he didn't want to call himself a healer, but he was more like a navigation aid. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he had me lay on this like massage table, and he had me run this energy ball like up and down my body, just sort of a pretend energy ball, but I mean, I could feel it. And he had a recording, and he asked me to go into the future and like identify stuff. And what I identified was I had a off-grid house in the mountains of Colorado, and it was going to be like a technology lab. And like totally accidentally, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I wound up out here, and it was very much just random.
Wow.
And for 3 years after living here, people kept telling me, you got to buy the domes. You're the only person who can really do that. And I finally went and looked after 2 years, and yeah, they had a tenant. And so I was like, well, I don't want to try to buy them when there's somebody living there. And then like the next year they were foreclosed on, or not foreclosed on, but evicted. And I went in and helped clean them up and bought them from the owner. And it was real synchronistic and kind of the most amazing place I've lived. A bit wintry, it's like 10 degrees outside right now. And I might be making a change next year.
Cool. Well, Kevin, you mentioned it being like a technology lab. Do you want to share a little bit about your background with like computers? And I know you've shared with me how you really like using voice control, or I think you do it mainly through Alexa or stuff like that. Or
yeah, that was the starting point. Well, I live off grid, and so when you live off grid, every little thing matters. Like people don't understand how much just a space heater uses. Even lights. I think if I just let myself go naturally, like if I had grid power running to the house, my baseline usage is about 500 watts. And there's nothing other than like the basic infrastructure running. Like that's not heat, that's not lights. It is refrigeration and it is freezing, but that's just the baseline. And then when I turn on stuff, it goes up from 500 watts, and that's 500 watts a day, 24 hours a day. And so like learning about energy conservation, and the thing is, we're so used to it. Like we'll turn on a space heater or 2 or 3. It's impossible for me to do that. I had a house guest once come and say, I can't wait to get to your house and take a shower and blow dry my hair. I'm like, you won't be blow drying your hair. That'll use the day's batteries up. And she ended up doing it. And the thing was, she blew dry her hair for 45 minutes. And people don't understand how much power that takes based on our scarcity model of power that we have. Why, for me, one of the key things I'm keen about is energy innovation and seeing some kind of renewable, sustainable energy coming up. Have you seen the alchemical sciences people stuff with the ball lightning generator? Have you seen that stuff?
It,
It's pretty amazing. And they were just in Clearwater. And there's a guy in Clearwater you got to meet who's building HHO stuff, which is the water as a source of energy. And he's in Clearwater and he's doing stuff there, and he's got some real activity going.
cool.
And I'll send you some of the videos, or Rob can look them up too. The Alchemical Sciences on YouTube is the thing, and it's this guy who's got ball lightning generator, and they're actually showing. So what they do is they run a portable generator, and the generator produces power normally, running a combustion engine, and then they turn on this circuit, and it starts bubbling the water through bubbling the intake gases through a coil, and it causes ball lightning. Ball lightning is these plasmoidal chambers, and inside those plasmoidal chambers, they're actually seeing fusion. So that Ed Grimm is the dude.
Yeah.
That first guy there, Ed Grimm, is the guy in Clearwater, I believe.
It says right here, Jordan. I'm Jordan.
Yeah, the Jordan is the guy who does the channel because he's presentable. It's either Ed Grimm. They would go back to home. Ed Grimm or one of the people is the guy in Clearwater.
Okay, cool. Well, that was Miami Plasmoid road trip interview. So
yeah, that's the one. They interviewed this guy, and he's local to you. You should meet up with that group and help facilitate. Maybe get him on your show.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. I'm always asking everybody I interview, any person they recommend that come into the
even Malcolm or Jordan would be good to get on the show. But these guys are, so what they're showing is that when they turn on the device, so the normal emissions of a gas engine is like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, water, and some other hydrocarbons. When they turn on the machine, they start seeing oxygen, helium, all these chemicals that are and elements that are not full of that are not in the intake gases, and so that sort of points toward fusion. And what they're claiming happens is they're generating what's called ball lightning, which are these balls of plasma, and when they run that through the engine, it increases efficiency, so the fuel consumption goes way down, and the exhaust gases become actually beneficial.
I won't play too much. I was going to keep the volume off. But this looks like their most popular video. Is this what you're talking about? The thunderstorm
generator? Yeah, thunderstorm generator. And I mean, this is the build guide. But yeah, so you probably want to consume a bunch of that and have a look. I mean, if it's real, so it's not a forever energy like some of the other claims are. But this is like a way of creating this whole ball lightning plasmoid.
Yeah, the comments. How is this related to Brown's gas? Does that?
It is not. This is a totally different thing. So Brown's gas is taking water and separating them. Okay. And I have theories about it. I don't know if they're accurate, but so in terms of Brown's gas is HHO, which is H2O is water. HHO is where you split the water apart into hydrogen, and oxygen. uh, and I can't. Are you muted or is sound down or something?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Okay, yeah.
now.
I
But
muted that video. Just
yeah, right.
look into it, Kevin. Like I told you before we went live, it always comes back to time. But having
Yeah,
an
yeah. But Brown's gas is um, the hydrogen not yet combined. So H doesn't exist stably in nature. It becomes H2. And so when you split apart hydrogen and when you split apart water, initially you get H and O. And then there's another reaction that combines the HH, and that actually reverses some of the thermodynamic equations, right? Because you're having one exploded apart, which I think is cooling, and then you have another one where they're combining, and that's heating. And I'm not 100% sure. This isn't my area of specialty, but my theory is that if you catch it before it actually combines and recombine it, like with ignition, you get a huge amount of energy out of HHO that is not present in H2O. Right? When you burn H2O, you still have to split them apart again before they combine. So there's these thermal reactions that waste energy. And I mean, there's claims, and I've never tested it, but there's claims that that HHO can boil water or burn a hole in glass or steel, and it sort of responds to the temperature of what's needed to melt it.
interesting. Cool.
Yeah, I haven't tested it, but that's what they say. It'll burn. I know that the jewelers like it because when you normally use a torch or a soldering iron to work on gold or silver, the part gets hot, but when you use an HHO torch, you can solder really small things and the heat doesn't spread.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, Kevin, this could segue into the world fairs. I mean, I wouldn't say this is like a suppressed technology. What we were just,
well, I mean, they're all weird and interlinked. So the world fairs, basically, there's a claim that the world fairs were undercover operations to dismantle ancient technology that was already there. And there's a whole school of thought that says, like, when we arrived in the United States or America, at the turn, at the beginning of the 1700s, or what was it, 1492, I guess, whenever we arrived, there were thriving cities with electricity and vehicles and all this other stuff that we are led to believe are modern, but they actually were stolen from a time prior to even the existence of European Western philosophy or Western culture. And there's these dome buildings that are everywhere. Apparently, they were power generators that use kind of the Tesla stuff. I mean, it's sort of interesting to me because what is the truth? Like, is this stuff around? Did it happen? It's like, and why did they keep us from knowing about it?
So I have the video playing that Kevin first shared with me, and my last guest I had on last week, Matt Belair, in 2022 during the trucker convoy up in Ottawa. Matt dropped a little nugget, Google Tartaria, and then boom. At some point, I was reaching out to friends like Kevin, asking them if they had heard about this. And then Kevin, shared this video with me. And back then, it was on YouTube, but now it's been scrubbed or it's really tough to find. So I have this playing, sound off on Rumble, and I can't recommend it enough. So thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing this with me. And
Yeah, this one is only one. So there's this whole other division of thought, which is mud fossil, and that stuff is bizarro too. And it actually says one of its claims is that the veins of gold that we find in the earth, these are actually uh, uh, the, the the circulatory systems of giants that have been turned into. The gold is actually their blood that has turned into minerals
wow.
after. And it's mud fossil is what it's. If you search YouTube or Rumble for mud fossil, you'll find tons of information about that.
I don't
And
think
apparently,
I've heard of mud floods, but mud fossil. Are you familiar with the mud floods?
I think it's the same sort of principles.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned to you a good friend of mine in Kauai brought up mud floods to me and other things, and he calls it an electromagnetic changeover event, and a way to kind of, we've all heard different things about the poles shifting or the the sun magnetic poles. I mean, it's interesting. So that I guess there's like magnetic stripping on the ocean floor, and there's ways to understand all of this called liquefaction, where the ground kind of turns to liquid or mud.
Is it faction, liquefaction, or is it?
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. Like, there's so much to take in, and like we were talking earlier before I came on the show about some of my ideas, and one of the things that sort of has always hit home is there's a Bible passage that says something like "Turn over a rock and I'll be there," and some people think it means that God's present in everything, and I kind of think it means that if you think about something, you're going to find it. And so, like, getting to getting to a truth, like we'll call it an uppercase truth. I don't know if that's a realistic thing because it seems to change. Um, like you've heard of Mandela effect. I think our timelines are changing, and some people claim it might be sinister, but the most sinister thing in the world is our own trauma, in my opinion. Like the stuff I'm carrying, like if there's evil deeds in the world, I still have that inside me. Like the ability to commit those evil deeds. Um,
Hmm.
oh yeah,
Well, Kevin, on that note, though, does that mean you don't believe in an objective truth? Like there's like if we were to say green is green or 2 plus 2 is 4 or certain truths like that, or the idea I like to always reflect when it comes to reality, the map is not the territory, meaning like our perception of reality isn't necessarily reality, but when we're conscious of this, we can try our best to have an accurate map, just like some people could have a map that is not accurate, and then someone could have a map that is accurate. You get what I'm saying? So that's part of in my
right. And the I've often wondered about some of those things. Because years ago I drove when I was teaching theta. I'm not doing much teaching these days, but when I was teaching classes, I had one in Seattle, and I decided to drive there. And I had my headset, and I was doing client work while driving. Uh, so I was in the car, and I was talking to one of my clients, and she said something about, "Oh, are you hoping that an alien will pick you up and drop you in Seattle?" Because I drove from Florida, and that's like about as far as you can drive in the United States. And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." And then, like literally 5 minutes after I said that, I passed by a billboard on the side of the highway that said "Space Alien Bar and Grill," and I'm like, "Not that kind of picked up."
that's hilarious.
It was, yeah, and so like do we manifest stuff that we think might be true? Like as we try it on, do we actually manifest proof of it. And if that's true, then yeah, reality is more of an agreement than it is a subjective truth. In fact, I think Scientology uses that language. I'm not an advocate, but the early teachings and the books are pretty awesome content in terms of the conversation that's being had there. One of the things is reality is really an agreement. It's not an actual true thing. It's more of like we agree. 1 + 1 is 2 because we agree it is. And that even this guy Terrence Howard, who's a pretty interesting fellow. He put forward that there's stuff wrong with physics, and when you look at what he's talking about, I think he might be right. But the part of the problem about him is he was trying to use words that were reserved in the physics community, so the reality of physics, in a way different than the way they're being applied in the world. So he couldn't have a conversation without causing confusion. And maybe that's what's needed. But what I found interesting is if you actually be what Terrence Howard is putting forward, like, one of my tricks that I use is I pretend to be something for a moment to see what it's like. So if you said, "Oh, my shoulder hurts," I could pretend to be Alex, and my shoulder would start hurting. And then I could actually, yeah. And so that being said, like I pretended to be in the reality context that he has, and there's a place for it. And the reality that he's putting forward is an accurate description of this different way of perceiving the world. And that's the thing about, we'll say, physics, is that the perception can regulate everything. Even mathematics. I don't know if I don't know where to get this content, but my teacher of this matrix energetics that I took, he was telling me that when they were adopting the periodic table weights, the weight of molecules and stuff, there was prior to this professor or mathematician who came up with the chemical weights, atomic weights, there was only mercury, lead, gold, and ether, right? And I think ether is one of the components in the flat Earth model too, isn't it? And I think that even Terrence Howard talks about it.
Yeah, but Kevin, I mean, it's a big part of the architecture around the world, whether it's the Great Pyramid, whether it's all of this old world architecture. And from my understanding, Mercury is a component of it, because Mercury is fascinating. I mean, for those who haven't really looked into it, liquid mercury, you can put heavy metal and it, floats. It doesn't, sink.
Right. Yeah. It's like one of the coolest melted liquid metals that are melted at room temperature.
But it's like impossible to get mercury unless you're like a scientific lab or something, because it's
it's a rare earth. It only occurs in nature as a what do you call it, where it's mixed molecule versus an atom.
But I guess when I was showing the mystery of the world fairs, some of that, I guess that's how the free energy would be extracted, ether. And then somehow, if we think the earth has a negative charge and then the air positive, and there's like this downward momentum, and then the idea of somehow mercury. So I don't know all the details, but I'll put these links in the video.
Well, there's tons of stuff. And I mean, like, I don't know, maybe they all converge at some point. And it could be that we're lied to, like part of my wrestling match that I've had over the last, 2020, probably 5 years, because COVID sort of catalyzed it, was are we being manipulated and lied to and held in a sort of a locked up state, or are we constructing that because we know something? It's like if we found a free energy thing, that means essentially we could make all the energy we want with no limit and no cost. And is man capable of wielding that without blowing each other up?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it could be that it's well regulated. And in fact, one of my experiences was, so in contemplating God, you also have to contemplate darkness because it's part of that whole scenario. And part of that whole scenario is like, are there evil beings? And like, there sure are people who are wounded to act evil. And even in my experience, I've run into incarnations of people who are evil. So like they're, like not just wounded to the degree that they're evil, but they may be descendant from something that wants something entirely different. In my opinion, evil is like the impetus to destroy. And maybe impetus to destroy is something that some things are in their nature. So it's like maybe that has something to do with it. So where was I? Okay, so I mean, there's so many things that I've looked into, and all of them seem to have merit. This mud fossil. There's also this, so that's like giants, and I mean, no mystery is the Smithsonian seems to hide shit.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's like it goes against the church narrative, or it goes against the, I don't know, human control narrative. I don't know why, but for some reason that organization does. NASA filters all the photos of space. Don't know why. Maybe it's because space is fake. Like, I mean, some of the flat Earth people put that forward, is that space is fake, and like the moon landing never happened, kind of stuff. And that's definitely we'll call it urban legend, or maybe even a fact that is put to an urban legend. So it's like, what's the truth there? And like I said, so once my girlfriend and I, we were living up in Michigan, and we decided we wanted to have like-minded people contact us. So we put postcards up all over town. We do this, we do that, we do meditations and ceremonies and stuff. And one day there's a knock at the door, and 3 women showed up, and each one of their names was Kathy.
Kathy?
Kathy. And they showed up and they said, hey, we're Kathy, and I'm Kathy, and I'm Kathy, and we want to do ceremony. So we're like, okay, well, we're doing a ceremony at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Show up and we'll do a ceremony. And they came, and before they came, we planted crystals all over the property. Because my girlfriend, she did not know what their intention was. She felt like there was something not right. And they came, and then we did ceremony. And then shortly after the ceremony was conducted, we split up. We were having conversations with them. My girlfriend was interested in learning trance channeling, and they were going to teach her. And so she was really into that. And then, like, I was having a conversation with one of the Kathys about one of the 3 Kathys, which is totally bizarre, right? But I was having a conversation with them, with this one lady, about the nature of God, and she said, well, I think I'm God. And I said, I think you're the wrong eye. Like, I think that it's a true statement that I am God, but it's not a true statement that my body is God. It's part of it, right? So it's like, if you come from the wrong eye, then you're not God. And I think part of the this is part of the whole Luciferian idea, is that Lucifer wanted to be the God, wants to be the God, as opposed to recognizing that God is all. And I mean literally all. Like, and lots of stuff came out of that. But one of the things that came out of that was she got really triggered, and all of a sudden I was the enemy. And they changed. And after they left, we found a vortex, which we could feel like it was trying to spin our bodies. And it was in the backyard. And my girlfriend, she was like, "Oh, this is dark." She said, "There's darkness under this." And I said, "Well, it doesn't feel totally right." And she's like, and what we came up with is that darkness, and there's this other saying from the Bible, which is tread not where angels fear to tread, or something like that. And what it meant to me at the time was, don't go past where you can be safe. Like, you have to be able to hold the mindset of God is present in everything. And we had a dark experience, but then underneath it, we found that there was brightness, that it was a manifestation of Creator, but we weren't ready to receive it yet. And that's what I wonder is the self-regulating way that truth reveals itself coming from human fears because we know we can't wield something, or and we'll become aware of stuff as it becomes true? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, to backtrack, so basically with one of the Kathys, it got brought up about God, and then she mentioned she was God, and then you mentioned something about like her body's not God or small I, and then somehow she got triggered about that. And
yeah, and I mean, it even so, like, we had painted. I think I even turned you on to Advanced Tachyon Technologies a bunch of years ago. That Stardust paint.
yeah, yep.
So we bought Stardust, which is this tachyonized plastic. We mixed it in our paint, and we painted our whole house with it. And bizarre stuff was happening. It started with I had this pendant that came from the founder of Matrix Energetics, and he told us it was a Stargate. And I was wearing this pendant, and it was hanging off the ceiling fan over the bed. And I said, my teacher said this has a Stargate on the back, and I've never even tried to activate it. And she goes, well, maybe you should. And I did, I pretended to activate it, which in a creative play and pretend actually can be very real. So what happened is the outside became illuminated. It was like midnight, and it became illuminated like daytime. And I thought we were on 25 acres, right in the center of it, in the middle of Michigan. And I thought there was a car there. So I went and looked, and she's like, "What are you doing? You just activated a Stargate." And I was trying to find a mundane explanation for it. And then ended up, there was no cars. There was no source of the light that was shining into the house. And eventually it faded away, but then we started perceiving a bunch of alien activity. And we noticed in the corner of the bedroom, there was a poster-sized section of the wall that had this silvery shimmer to it. And you could put your hands on it. It looked like it was behind water. It was underwater.
It sounds like the Matrix, remember, with the mirror and
yeah, kind of like that, right? But you could put your hands on the wall, and everybody who did it had an experience. When I put my hands on the wall, I saw Mount Shasta looking up at it with a green meadow and the spire of it rising in the distance. Other people had different experiences. We had like what were like aliens coming in, like shadowy people, like non-physical, but you could still perceive them as like bodies. We had two. What's the dog from Egyptian stuff?
Nubis.
We had two Anubis standing on each side of it, like not physical, like not a model from the store, but there were these shadow figures that were Anubis standing on each side of it, like guards, and lots of activity around that place. I remember once we did a yoga class in there, and it was daytime when it started, and it was night when it finished. It was after dark, and the back wall was all windows. And when we finished, there were thousands of sets of glowing eyes looking in at our yoga class.
Wow.
And there were 20 people in the room who saw it. It's crazy.
Wow.
Crazy stuff happened, even to the degree that shattered everything I thought about reality, because what I became aware of is that we may not exist except when we become aware of existing. And like what became possible. So like, if I sit down and I go over, yesterday I woke up at 5:30, made a fire, started the generator, made some coffee, I could go through my day. Well, it's entirely possible that the entire history of my existence is created every time I become self-aware, and goes completely out of existence when I don't. Like maybe I don't exist, or maybe I'm having an unconsciousness.
Looks like the double slit experiment, right? A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It's like, and I mean, then that whole God thing, it gets really interesting. And we there's been all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take it too far off of where we are. I guess we're sort of.
No, I appreciate it, Kevin. I mean, I wish, there was more time. Normally I shoot for like an hour, we can be a little bit over so we don't have to, rush. But with you saying all of that, I am curious about kind of what you feel or think is the best evidence for God. And if it's the all is God, like when we have that type of perception of God. And then even I'm curious how you would describe your worldview, like your worldview right now. Like, and I guess to continue with what you just said, it has a lot to do with awareness, right? Like how aware are we right now in this moment, right? So
I think that the best evidence for God, starting with the first question you asked, is the aspect of providence, which shows up in the form of thought leads form.
A thought leads form.
A thought leads form. So, for example, earlier when we were talking before we did this interview, you were saying that when you started looking into flat Earth theories, all of a sudden a lot of stuff started showing up for you. And I was telling you that when I was studying HHO, which was right after my long training with the theta healing stuff, one of the classes which I took the course and the teacher's course back to back, that was 6 weeks.
For those who don't know, Kevin, you're talking about the Kundalini Research Institute, the healthy.
No, this is Theta Healing Institute of Knowledge.
I thought the HHO was like the healthy.
That's hydrogen and water. HHO is energy from water.
No, I meant for something with Yogi Bhajan, like the holy, happy.
Oh, he's happy, healthy, holy. HHO. Well, that's too funny.
I know.
Anyway, yeah, but and I've dabbled in so much, and like I mean, really, for me, theta has been the most profound tool, because it gives me the power to adjust what I unconsciously think about.
I agree, and I just want to say, Kevin, because nobody would know unless I guess say it. I got certified by you. Like I took the.
Right, and I've taught over 2,000 people.
I'm an.
They,
I think I'm an advanced theta healing practitioner.
they do expire, so you did take the classes, and they do recertify. And I used to like hate it because it was like a structure that shouldn't need to, and I thought maybe it was the way that the founder was able to create financial prosperity. But the truth is that every time I go, I learn something else, and the technique has improved. So they're getting better and better. And I mean, there are shortcomings. One of the problems with the tool is that most folks are really in denial about some of their own negative characteristics, and you really have to allow that. One of the processes that I actually sort of uniquely developed with a handful of theta practitioners is this positive digging technique, which is a technique of finding. So I guess worldview. I think we are aspects of Creator or God, and because we're aspects of an infinite thing, we're also infinite in nature, and so like one of the questions that comes up when I discover a fear is, why would an infinite being have fear? And it's one of the things we asked. A bunch of us asked. We had like little working groups at these theta courses, and one of our little primarily male groups was, we were like, more power. We want more power. We want to have more access to create things and stuff. And we realized that fear was the limiter in that. But we also realized that from my true nature of I'm infinite in nature, fear is a ridiculous notion. And so what we came up with is that fear is masking a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness of how some mechanism works or how things. So we started digging forward on it. Like, we found that using kinesiology, we could find, like, if I was afraid of spiders, the best thing about spiders is they're unpredictable, and I might then be afraid of the unpredictable. And eventually, it's like I might eventually reach a point where I completely don't understand the unpredictable or some aspect that goes forward. So, like, if I dug forward on spiders, which is not entirely accurate, I don't have a thing with them anymore, but if I was afraid of spiders, I might be afraid of the unpredictable, and I might find that the unpredictable is like inherently scary, which is a belief, right? So then I'm automatically going to react to the unpredictable as scary, and I'll become scared. And so, like, I might not be able to understand what it means from the God perspective of what unpredictability is, like what it means to live without knowing how to predict. And ironically, an infinite being doesn't have unpredictability. Like, we have to actually mask a bunch of knowledge and awareness off to become unaware of the circumstances that we could then predict the future. And we probably do that because it can get really boring if you can manifest anything instantly, and if you can have like, know what's going to happen every minute. It might just be boring and uninteresting. So we may actually do that as a mechanism, as is, this whole darkness moving to light may be just a play for us to have an experience. Like, we may have set that up in advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. And I was trying to joke, Kevin. I heard you say anymore. Like, you're not afraid of spiders anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the case of most things. Like, once upon a time, I was terrified to do this kind of podcast or vlog or whatever the hell it is. And I mean, I had to go on the radio. Like that's how I found out I was afraid. I was asked to do a radio show, and it was on Theta. And I actually did a download to like drivers during the class or during the interview. It was during like rush hour, and I did a download on it, how to like get rid of road rage and stress about driving and all that. Amazing conversation, but it probably wouldn't have been as good if I hadn't cleared my fears prior to joining it, and that's what the tool gave me, was the ability to do that.
Wow. Yeah. I agree. When I first learned theta healing, I gun ho. I mean, I think you probably remember I was really enthusiastic
Yeah,
at all. And
yeah. I mean, I don't know if you remember the specifics, but in that course, you had a memory of being stung by hundreds of bees or a lot of bees. I don't remember, but you actually had something come up in the course, and you told me, and right when you told me, when I was like 10, I stepped on a black hornet's nest. I was stung over 100 times. And like when you told me about your remembering of the trauma of that bee sting, first thing that happened is every pain point, every place that I was stung on my body, I felt. So
wow.
I felt like all these stings. And then the second thing that happened, the next day after the course, I hear this truck idling in the driveway up in Tarpon where I was living. And there was a guy out there, and he was actually removing a bee's nest from a tree.
Yeah.
And I talked to him. A lot of weird synchronicities. Born the year he became a beekeeper the year I was born. And
Wow.
the first year he got stung, he was hospitalized 7 times from bee stings. And then the second year he couldn't go without being stung, without getting depressed. He actually became addicted to bee stings.
Well, it's funny we're talking about this because I thought it was 2012. I got stung by a bee. I was in Ennisbrook, and there was a pool, and a bee was in the water. And I just, was trying to help it get out, and it stung me. And it was amazing because nothing happened, So, I mean,
Interesting, yeah.
because it sounds like the same story with this person who was removing the beehive, that he used to be allergic and now he's obviously not, if this is his line of work. And I wouldn't say I'm addicted, but in Kauai, I would do some beekeeping, and I've been stung, and it's not really that painful. And I do see it as medicine, because there's kind of weird how nature kind of teaches us about everything in moderation, and that something in small amounts can be medicine, but in larger amounts, it can be a toxin, or just the way our body.
Right. Well, the one of the best examples of that is the natural method of treating allergies is bee pollen.
Really? Yeah.
So, and so
Yeah,
I think it's pretty funny. It's like the 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 thing that stops us from being allergic to oak
it's the pollen, right?
is oak pollen, which is basically the ejaculate from an oak tree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Which
fun.
is
God's definitely a comedian, right, Kevin? We could agree
something like that, yeah.
something like that. Well, where would you like to go? Because I want to be respectful of your time. But
I think we probably need more conversations, but we should probably wrap up pretty quickly.
yeah, is there any way you'd like to wrap it up? I'm gonna definitely take your advice and reach out to the alchemy, people near me. So
Yeah, I mean, he's not directly related. He's just an independent dude who's living in Clearwater, working on unlimited fuel from water, which would be really cool to get the word out, especially if he's getting traction. And one of the things that sort of consistent, and I think the answer is ubiquitous spreading of information. There's been 6,000 patents that have been suppressed by a law in the U.S. that puts them under national security. Some of those patents have to do with carburetors that extend fuel economy. Some of them have to do with like water as fuel. Some of them have to do like Tom Bearden was a guy who was doing 0 point energy. His stuff didn't. I think he may have passed away or he's just gotten quiet. But some of these guys were really standing in a place of being able, like the energy in a vacuum thing. I'm pretty sure Bearden had something, and he just kind of vanished. And he was around in 2010. And I researched a lot of his and did a lot of study of remote viewing. You remember that remote viewing app, and you were like the number one on the letterboard for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because the Mark Goober who I'm interviewing in like an hour, I just finished his audiobook called Upside Down Contact. Here, I'll pull it up real quick. But I'm really looking forward to talking about remote viewing with him. So he's on board with Flat Earth. He graduated top of his class in Princeton. He was the head of the varsity tennis club. He was an investment banker. Here he is. And somehow in the last few years, he's just pumped out all of these books, talking about viruses aren't real. The heliocentric model is just full of lies. It's not real.
So is he actually proposing that viruses are completely fiction?
Yeah, it's very similar to Andrew Kaufman, kind of like how they've never really been isolated. And then when people really looked at the COVID situation, I mean, I don't want this video get taken down from YouTube, but sometimes, when people start talking about the scamdemic or whatever, that's what ends up happening. But there's a whole, understanding called terrain theory versus germ theory, where if you have a fish in a fishbowl and the water's dirty, you don't vaccinate the fish, you make the water clean. And, so that's about terrain, that it's more about people's exposure to toxins, toxins in the food, air, and water, and then electromagnetic pollution that, has harmful effects on people. And then there's basically something that could look like viruses that just have to do with the body trying to free itself of toxins. They're called exosomes.
Sure, and that makes sense. And I mean, what was the one? So there's two kind of interesting things that I've experienced. When I was living in Australia, I used to walk to work. And the office that I worked in was right in the center of Melbourne, which is like, big city. And I would walk to work, and I walked through this park every morning. And so one evening I was walking home, and Melbourne is famous for these little tiny flies, and they try to get the moisture off your face. So they're always like swarming around you. But as I was walking through this park, there was this cloud of flies. And over 100 yards away, I could see them. And it was just like a giant cloud. It was probably 20 feet tall, so occupying a space from the ground to about 20 feet. This cluster of flies with a very distinct boundary. So you could see these flies in a form. And you know how like you see birds flying in a formation and they all move together? These flies were kind of doing that. But there was a 20-foot tall giant in a form made by these flies.
Oh my God.
That was walking. So you could see legs moving and arms swinging and head bobbing. But it was a composition of flies. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm seeing. And so it becomes, upside down. Like, this is where that Terrence Howard thing comes in. Like, if we have even one aspect of our conceptual understanding, we'll call it wrong, but I would say probably not right word exactly. We can skew all of physical reality. And, it's kind of interesting because in the early days of Native American, and maybe even not even early days, maybe they still hold these views, but Native American understanding of reality, when someone was sick, they had an evil spirit.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is with theta, you do most of that stuff. And like in the theta context, a virus is actually an energy of worthiness. So if you have a lack of worthiness in some area, you will have a specific viral infection. And the latest sort of popular virus, we won't be specific, but the latest popular viral infection seemed to have a point of view around it, which was, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. Um, and so it's like almost a way to exit. And quite a few people did. So I find it fascinating that these kind of things can happen. So it makes me wonder if maybe we uh, tried to over analyze and, like, that's it. I know the truth, uppercase T. And we're actually making flies more real than this giant.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
hear. I mean, it's kind of like the more I talk about this with people, it's like sometimes it's not about really understanding like what is our reality, but it's sometimes like, at least understanding the lies, where like you mentioned earlier, I mean, there's claims, and then from my understanding, like in my personal experience, is I am a flat earther because I attempted to substantiate all these specific claims. And then I just love networking. So then I just started reaching out to, what seems to be like the people who have been researching this, for quite a while. And like I told you earlier, Jaron, who I've had on the podcast, he's in South America right now. He's about to be in Antarctica with all these devices and measuring tools to actually do experiments. Like, this is kind of where we're at. And, it's just in my mind when we look at, and like I said, Kevin, I don't want to go on and on. We're coming to an end now. But when we look at how much money is going into space and how it's like the biggest industry, and one millionth of that budget could end world hunger. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's just something strange going on. And I think, I mean, like a lot of people, our imagination, we get emotionally invested in, space and solar systems and galaxy and aliens or Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever. And we don't even consider the possibility that we may be living in the Hunger Games right now. The fact that we can't, like, you've been to Australia, but, what if this world is bigger than mainstream has us believe, that there's more continents that actually have, civilizations.
Right. And so your parallel to Hunger Games is that there's sort of
Like
a locked area that we're allowed to participate in.
yeah, because it has to do with the end treaty, and just
Right.
even people that can go to Antarctica, it's like they're just really getting to the shoreline, and then there's a whole nother topic because there's synchronicities. Like a friend of mine who's a farmer in Kauai, his son is Colin O'Brien, who allegedly you know went across Antarctica. I mean, it's just crazy, the some of the synchronicities, and it's just about the truth. And I try to maintain this perspective that I'm not attached to my beliefs. Like, I just want to have an accurate perception of reality, and that's what I'm interested in. And so yeah, but anyways, I don't want to, go on and on about that, but I just appreciate you so much, Kevin, because it's like the more I do this Truth Lab, it's like I'm realizing, like, geez, I could just, do a whole series with a bunch of my guests, and then I want to take things to the next level and maybe somehow include more people and to really talk about solutions when it comes to how we see society best being organized. In my opinion, it's transitioning to stateless society. Imagine a society where every service government provides is provided in an open market where people compete to provide the very best quality of service, instead of government.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like along that line, we're also transitioning. We've always been able to know when we're being lied to,
Well, no, but
and then
helps. Not everybody's that intuitive, Kevin. Some
well,
people.
they don't believe in themselves, right? And it's part of the thing that puzzles me, right? So like uh, you and I both have had a firsthand, I would say, understanding of the presence of God because we've thought something and it became physical, right? Like, remember the apple?
Oh yeah, I knew you were about to bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but like, I mean, we sat and intended for an apple to appear out of nowhere, and I think we sat in meditation for over an hour, and then at the end of that time, it hadn't appeared, and we surrendered. And then the next morning, we found a mummified apple in that meditation area.
Yeah, it was great.
Fascinating. Uh, but like, so like the proof of some greater power in there, call it God, has been firsthand. And what just is fathomable to me is how that is not common everyday practice. Like, why is it that that's being, I remember at the same time we were hanging out frequently, CNN ran a story about how Vipassana meditation is a cult.
Oh wow, that's crazy. And have you
And I
done
mean,
have you done that, Kevin? Been
yeah, you know how hard it is to
no,
stay 10 days without speaking, basically?
yeah, but think about it. Someone you could get think about all the people that spend all this money on therapy, counseling, but then the type of spiritual growth and understanding of psychology through being quiet for 10 days.
Yeah. If
So
I
I
didn't have a dog, I probably would do it because I don't see much of anybody. But I
yeah,
talk to my dog a lot.
yeah. Well, for those who don't know, your dog is blind.
Blind in one eye and deaf.
Blind and okay, so okay, she's deaf. She's
Yeah.
100% deaf. She can't hear at
So
all.
I've honked the horn right over her head from the car, and she didn't move.
And she's an what is she, Australian
She's
shepherd?
an Australian Shepherd. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate your time so much.
Yeah. I mean, let's do it again. Let's do one that's more specific. Maybe, maybe I can demo some of the theta practices and stuff.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
yeah, whatever you want to do. Or
I
we
like
can go
that.
further.
Yeah, and now that I'm at episode 10, I was kind of, I was like 10 minutes behind, and then I was trying to set it up to YouTube so I could just, have it automatically streamed live, so I'm trying to play around with that. So we'll definitely,
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, or you can even make B-roll if you want. We can go over and do a bunch of recordings, and if you want to keep regular stuff. One of the things that I've learned about this, because it's been interesting to me about doing some kind of YouTube channel, but one of the problems is that everybody I see who does it, as soon as they get some big following, it becomes a high pressure thing.
yeah.
You got to be ready for it. Like, to produce new content every week, you get burnout if you don't have the right team
I mean,
around
to
you.
be honest, Kevin, I mean, I've been doing this since May. Rob really helped encourage quite a bit, and it's now December, and this is just episode 10. There was one guest I had, and he was just a little out there, and I didn't even feel comfortable uploading it to Rumble because I've only had one video taken down recently, and I think YouTube told me it was my first strike, medical misinformation or something. Just it was a great guest. He's an awesome flat earther, and I could go on and on about him. He lives in Orlando, but anyways,
Yeah, I mean, some of the theta healing concepts may become flagged as medical misinformation. It's like, is it true that um, your body follows your mind and your emotions, like, and vice versa? Like, is this stuff true? Like, it's not mainstream, and it's not like, I think they said, who is their source of truth? Is YouTube's philosophy, World Health Organization,
I know exactly. Well,
which is like
I,
tragic.
I am curious, Kevin. Do any questions come to your mind here if I pull up Mark's website again? Because I'm just curious. I was talking to my friend who I mentioned earlier, who was first telling me about the mud floods and so on. But I was asking him some questions, and we kind of were talking about like, oh, maybe what's this guy's view on the Bible? This is the book that I just finished on Audible. If you have an Audible account, some of his are free. This one, it all started with his first book being like Upside Down Thinking, and then he's produced six more. But out of the seven books, I gravitated towards this, and then he's really emphasizing like remote viewing, being a form of contact, and I could go on, but he's trying to counter the World Economic Forum. Like, this stuff isn't a conspiracy theory. They wrote a book about the Great Reset.
Well, and some of these things could be not nefarious, right? So here's an example. The general perspective on communism is that it's basically a euphemism for totalitarianism, because human beings tend to be like hierarchical, and so if you try to do communism, what ends up happening is some people are more equal than others. That's the thing. But the Russian experiment on communism was never allowed to try.
What do you mean? What experiment?
Well, USSR was communist, and there were millions of people murdered and all this stuff, but the U.S. never stopped running psyops against them. Like, psyops were run against communism and USSR from day one. And what happens if you actually like an example is, everybody who's watched Star Trek, everybody doesn't earn money, or all the resources you need are there for you, yada yada. It's like a society like that could be really cool. UBI, a lot of people think it's like a preventer, or it's like a way that the state gets control of you. Maybe, but it could also be like the next step. The problem is we do have a competitive nature, a resource scarcity mindset, and if both of those go away, and we actually truly live for the benefit of all life, it could be that it does well to have a new society structure. And so a lot of these things that are trying to bring that in, they could be leaders, or they could be evil shit that's really trying to control humanity. It's hard to say. But what is true, and what I've seen, is that hierarchies exist, and they always have, and they always find a way of settling into the structure. And until we neutralize the desire for that, so like what really should happen is the president or the governor, right? Ethical trial. And I think some of this stuff's happening by accident. One of my insights when I was doing theta is that a lot of men have been raised by women because a lot of the masculine is poison, right? It's warlike, it's controlling, it's domineering, and what would be nice is to have, like a loving, sort of nurturing community of people, whether they're Israeli or Jewish or Christian or any idea of what it is. Like, be nice to have that. Is this the Thrive people? Is this like?
Yeah, so I have a subscription. I mean, Kevin, it's basically what I'm suggesting is you join us for the next Fireside Live. So I believe that's going to be December 21st.
Yeah, I could do that. That sounds great. And this is like, what was the guy's name who was running that?
His name's Foster Gamble. I met him in Colorado when I connected with you and did the isolation chamber for the first time at the Breakthrough movement. But I've been trying to share with Foster. I mean, he's open-minded. I did a one-on-one Zoom with him about some of the deception with space. Because remember with Nassim, like, I don't know, I'm just for some reason very passionate about, the truth and just trying to overcome some deceitful lies. But it's
What happened to Miss Sim? I don't hear from him anymore. Is he?
yeah, yeah, he's still doing stuff. I mean, there's people that still work for him that had worked for him out in Kauai. I mean, he's in California. He's still doing random stuff. I think he went to Greece, with a bunch of people
It
affiliated.
feels like he was sort of canceled. He must have pushed the envelope too far.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I think he's a little behind the times somewhat, at least with what I've been kind of researching. And sometimes people, if they've been thinking about astrophysics for so long and then, they don't even take the time to try to understand flat earth. They just ridicule it, and it's like they're incapable of seeking understanding. But I'm
Right.
telling you this because Foster's entire life has culminated to him writing a book that he's writing right now about stateless society and how we transition into volunteerism, which is, no more government. And, so it's pretty interesting. And it's just a good opportunity once a month. He gets together for like 2.5 hours. Normally there's like 60 of us. And we just discuss current events kind of through like the, Thrive perspective. So,
Right.
but there's so much on his website with his forum. People can talk about stuff, and then Foster has his blog here, and yeah. So I mean, at some point, it's a lot because I try to stay on the cutting edge of solutions and people that realize our thoughts are creating reality, and how can we synergize together.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice for like the truth to really come forward.
whatever the
And
truth is, huh? Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm kind of putting that out there. Like I remember for this most recent presidential election, I got to the point where I was like a little bit stressed about the possibility of the Democratic people staying in another 4 years, and I surrendered it, and I did a prayer, and I said, do the best thing for our country and world,
Wow.
and was pretty happy with the results. So, like,
That's good, Kevin. For some people, they get a little triggered when I explain to them I don't vote because Foster doesn't vote, and we don't vote because of our, principle of volunteerism, of wanting a stateless society. And it's not like there has to be one stateless society. There can be plenty.
right,
It's interesting because I was helping my friend run for mayor of Dunedin, where I live, but I personally, don't vote, and I try to use it as an opportunity if people can listen to me, of me explaining why I don't vote because of
remember that movie, The Yes Man?
Yes Man.
Yeah, with Jim Carrey.
Oh, okay. Now that you say Jim Carrey, I think so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He like went to a self help class, and the the guy told him say yes to everything.
I don't know if I've seen this, so thanks.
You
I
should watch it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
At the end of it, they're exploiting. Like you figure out that uh, all the homeless people uh, go to the event because they come out of the thing saying yes to everything, and this homeless guy goes, "Hey, can you give me a lift?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No," and then he's like, "Yes," and then he's like, "Can I use your phone?" And then he runs his battery down because the guy kept talking on his phone, and then he gets lost in a park and runs out of gas. And I mean, you got to watch it; it's pretty funny. But
Oh, thank you.
the interesting thing is that even through the exploitation, the guy benefited.
Do you see it's an hour and 44 minutes long?
I saw that.
So, well, Kevin, we
Yeah,
could keep going and going, but like I said, I have the other interview, but we'll definitely, stay in touch, and
yeah.
I stay warm up there, okay? And
Well, it's nice and toasty in here.
yeah, and then who knows? I'll stop the recording now, but maybe we can talk for like a few
Yeah, I
more.
think Rob had some questions about solar.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. This was episode 10. Episode 11 is going to start in 53 minutes. So,
Nice.
thanks again, and thanks, Kevin. All right.
Yeah.
Peace.
Yeah.